These 15 games were unfortunately buried alive, but they definitely deserve a comeback. Coming in at number 15, we have The Order 1886, a game that quickly became infamous for its short runtime and missed potential. Despite being one of the most visually stunning titles at the time, it faced backlash for offering little gameplay depth. Set in an alternate history where the player controls a group of knights battling supernatural forces during the Victorian era, The Order 1886 had an intriguing premise. However, its linearity and reliance on quick-time events left many disappointed, and its relatively short story length didn't help matters. In addition to the gameplay complaints, the game's pacing felt disconnected, often breaking the immersive world it tried so hard to build. The narrative, while unique in setting, wasn't enough to justify the overall experience. Critics and players were vocal about how it felt like a glorified tech demo rather than a full-fledged game. However, that doesn't mean The Order 1886 didn't have potential. The world building was superb, with the historical backdrop and detailed character designs making it one of the most immersive games in terms of visual fidelity at the time. Despite its lackluster reception, the concept behind The Order 1886 could definitely be refined and expanded into something truly special. If developers can rework the experience with more interactivity, it could easily transform into a cult classic. At number 14, we're talking about Sleeping Dogs, a game that was somewhat overshadowed by the likes of Grand Theft Auto 5, but offered a fresh take on the open-world crime genre. Set in the vibrant streets of Hong Kong, the game put players in the shoes of Wei Xin, an undercover cop who infiltrates the triads. The game's mix of martial arts combat, driving, and gunplay was an absolute blast, but it was its immersive setting and narrative that made it stand out. When it was first released in 2012, Sleeping Dogs was often compared to GTA and Saints Row, two juggernauts of the open world genre, but where those games thrive with outlandish humor and chaos, Sleeping Dogs offered a more grounded emotional story with a focus on the cultural intricacies of Hong Kong's criminal underworld. What set it apart from its competitors was the smooth hand-to-hand combat system, which was influenced by classic martial arts films, giving players the thrill of dishing out high-octane bone-crushing moves with fluidity. It's hard not to feel that Sleeping Dogs deserved more recognition than it received. With the right marketing and a more fleshed out world, it could be the next big crime game that combines storytelling, action, and a unique setting. Next up at number 13 is Vanquish, a fast-paced, over-the-top shooter that took the world by surprise when it launched in 2010. Developed by Platinum Games, the title was known for its aggressive combat mechanics and unique aesthetic. Players took control of Sam Gideon, a soldier with a powerful suit that allowed him to slide across the battlefield at breakneck speeds while dishing out devastating firepower. What made Vanquish stand out was its unique blend of tactical shooting and high-speed action. Unlike most shooters where players are encouraged to take cover and slowly advance, Vanquish forced you to constantly stay in motion. However, despite its solid mechanics and enjoyable story, it was unfortunately buried under the weight of other popular shooters like Call of Duty and Halo. There's no denying that Vanquish remains one of the most underrated gems in the action game genre. The gameplay still feels fresh today, and its influence can be seen in modern action games. It's a title that, if revived with modern visuals and perhaps an expanded storyline, could find its place in the hearts of gamers who love adrenaline-pumping action. At number 12, we have Metro Exodus, a title that delivered one of the most atmospheric and detailed post-apocalyptic worlds ever seen in a first-person shooter. The third entry in the Metro series, it expanded on its predecessor's formula with a more open world structure while retaining its trademark atmosphere and narrative depth. Players followed Artyom as he journeys across Russia, fighting off mutant creatures and hostile factions while uncovering dark secrets about the world. The game stood out thanks to its seamless seamless mix of open-world exploration, survival mechanics, and high-stakes firefights. The world felt alive with dynamic weather systems, day-night cycles, and an ever-present sense of danger. The narrative was just as strong, continuing the themes of survival and the human condition that made the Metro series so beloved. However, it was often overlooked in favor of larger, flashier titles that dominated the gaming landscape that year, leading to its underappreciation. Despite this, Metro Exodus is a game that deserves more recognition for its incredible world building and emotional depth. The combination of survival horror with open world exploration creates a uniquely tense atmosphere that's hard to find in other games. If given the chance, a sequel could expand the world even further, allowing players to experience new regions, factions, and challenges that continue the gripping story. Coming in at number 11, Injustice 2 was the game that brought the world of DC Comics to life like never before. Released in 2017, this fighting game built upon the success of its predecessor by refining its mechanics, expanding the roster, and adding a robust single-player campaign. The game stood out not just because of its deep combat mechanics, but also for its story, which delved into the conflict between heroes and anti-heroes, blending superhero action with emotional depth. One of the key selling points of Injustice 2 was its unique gear system, which allowed players to customize their favorite characters, not only altering their appearance, but also affecting gameplay. This added a layer of strategy and personalization that made the fighting experience even more engaging. On top of that, the game's roster of characters ranging from Superman to lesser-known DC heroes and villains was an impressive feat. Despite all of these strengths, Injustice 2 failed to reach the level of mainstream popularity it deserved, and its potential as a staple in the fighting game community was never fully realized. Though Injustice 2 is often left in the shadow of other popular titles, its foundation is something that still holds promise. The engaging combat system combined with the rich DC universe has the potential to bring fans back and even attract new ones, delivering a new era of superhero fighting games. Coming in at number 10 is Blur, a racing game that managed to combine the thrills of arcade-style racing with the intensity of combat. Released in 2010, Blur had everything that a racing game fan could want: stunning graphics, a fun multiplayer mode, and a range of cars to choose from. What made Blur unique was its combination of traditional racing with power-ups and combat elements similar to Mario Kart, but with a more mature tone. The game's multiplayer mode was its standout feature, offering an exciting experience where players could not only race but also use weapons like mines and shields to sabotage their opponents. This added a layer of chaos and excitement that made it a blast to play with friends. But unfortunately, Blur came out during a time when racing games were struggling to find their place in a saturated market. As a result, it never garnered the attention it deserved and was soon forgotten. Despite its underwhelming reception, Blur remains a gem for racing enthusiasts who appreciate fast-paced action with a twist. Its blend of arcade-style racing and combat elements set it apart from other titles in the genre. The power-ups and intense multiplayer modes created a fun and unpredictable experience that kept players coming back for more. If given a second chance, Blur can bring back that chaotic fun, especially for those who missed it the first time around. At number 9, we have Sniper Elite 4, a game that excelled at blending stealth, tactical gameplay, and precision shooting. The game is set during World War II and follows Carl Fairburn as he hunts down Nazi officials across the Italian countryside. The game emphasized on long-range sniping, where players had to carefully consider wind direction, distance, and bullet drop in order to take out targets. Its open-world levels provided a level of freedom and strategy that was rare in the genre, offering multiple approaches to each mission. The real joy of Sniper Elite 4 was in the long-range engagements, where players would position themselves strategically and take down enemies from afar with meticulous care. The game also featured an exciting co-op mode, allowing players to team up and take on missions together. The kill cam system, which showed graphic slow-motion shots as the bullet pierced its target, was a unique feature that had a surprisingly satisfying impact. However, despite its innovative mechanics and polished visuals, it didn't quite capture the attention of the larger gaming community. There's no question that Sniper Elite 4 4 is a standout in the tactical shooter genre, and it's one of the most satisfying sniper experiences available. Its emphasis on patience, planning, and execution in combat set it apart from other shooters at the time, making it a great pick for players who enjoy a more methodical pace. At number 8, we find Middle-earth: Shadow of War, the sequel to the critically acclaimed Shadow of Mordor from 2014. This action RPG delivered on its predecessor's promise by expanding the open-world experience while introducing a more complex combat system, an even deeper nemesis system, and vast territories to conquer. The game's world-building and combat mechanics were top-notch, but it was the innovative nemesis system that really set Shadow of War apart from other open-world games. The nemesis system, which allows players to build rivalries with orc captains and warlords, created a level of personal investment and unpredictability that few other games can match. This made each encounter feel unique and personal, but the game received criticism for its microtransaction system, which many felt detracted from the experience. Some felt that these mechanics were overly intrusive, affecting the balance of progression and exploration. But one thing's for sure, Middle-earth: Shadow of War was a game that pushed the boundaries of what could be achieved in open-world action games. Its innovative mechanics and breathtaking visuals deserve to be celebrated, as they offered a fresh experience for fans of the franchise and newcomers alike. At number 7 on our list is Mafia Definitive Edition, a full remake of the 2002 classic that brought the story of Tommy Angelo in the criminal underworld of Lost Heaven to a new generation of players. The remake was a visual and gameplay overhaul, modernizing the graphics and improving mechanics, while staying true to the original's narrative. The story follows Tommy's rise from a humble taxi driver to a key member of the Salieri crime family. While the original Mafia was praised for its cinematic storytelling, the remake elevated that experience with an updated script and fresh voice acting that provided a more polished, emotional experience. One of the most impressive aspects of Mafia Definitive Edition was the effort put into recreating the city of Lost Heaven, a 1930s-inspired fictional city with stunning attention to period detail. Players could explore a meticulously designed world filled with Art Deco architecture and vintage cars, all while being drawn into a compelling tale of loyalty, betrayal, and ambition, offering an engaging narrative reminiscent of classic crime films. Its slower pace and linear progression might not appeal to everyone, especially in an era dominated by open-world games. Still, the Mafia series has a loyal fanbase that appreciates the game's unique brand of storytelling, and there's hope that future installments can keep that legacy alive. Coming in at number 6, we have Rage 2, an explosive open-world shooter that delivered chaotic combat and vibrant post-apocalyptic visuals. Released in 2019, it was the sequel to Rage, though it took a significantly different approach, focusing more on fast-paced action and over-the-top mechanics. Players took on the role of Walker, the Last Ranger, as they traverse a world ravaged by a global catastrophe. The game's combat was its strongest aspect, combining traditional shooter elements with vehicular combat, special abilities, and a variety of weapons that allowed for pure destruction. While the game looked and played great in the moment, the open-world structure felt somewhat empty and lacked meaningful progression. The narrative, while engaging at times, couldn't quite live up to the over-the-top action that players were craving. It was often compared to titles like Borderlands and Mad Max, and while it shared similar DNA, it didn't feel as refined or immersive as either. The overall experience was fun, but many felt it was missing something crucial. Despite these issues, Rage 2 managed to provide a uniquely satisfying gameplay loop that involved constant action and destruction. With more polish and deeper world building, it could easily have been a standout hit. Still, it remains a solid action game for those looking to blow things up without much hesitation. At number 5, we have Battlefield Hardline, a spin-off of the highly popular Battlefield series that focused on the war between cops and criminals rather than military combat. Released in 2015, Hardline was met with mixed reviews. While it featured the same intense, large-scale multiplayer battles that Battlefield was known for, its departure from military warfare to urban crime dramas felt like a shift that didn't sit well with many fans. However, Hardline still brought some interesting gameplay mechanics to the table, such as the use of police gadgets, which added a unique tactical layer to combat. The story mode, while a departure from the epic narratives of other Battlefield games, followed a police officer, Nick Mendoza, trying to take down a criminal organization. The plot was heavily influenced by TV crime dramas, complete with intense shootouts and police procedural moments. Despite the fresh take, the game's campaign was criticized for being too cliché, and the multiplayer mode didn't feel as refined as what players had come to expect from the main Battlefield titles. The shift away from military combat was jarring for some, and it didn't quite land with the Battlefield fan base. Even though Battlefield Hardline was a misstep in the eyes of some fans, it brought something different with itself that was worthy of attention. With the right tweaks and improvements, Hardline could have found its own identity and given the Battlefield franchise a new, interesting direction. Landing at number 4, Far Cry 5 takes the spotlight, a game that pushed the Far Cry series into new territory with its setting and story. Released in 2018, it introduced players to the fictional Hope County, Montana, which has been taken over by a doomsday cult led by the charismatic Joseph Seed. The game shifted the franchise's typical tropical or mountainous locations to a more rural American environment, bringing a fresh change to the open-world first-person shooter format. The cult storyline offered a unique and eerie narrative filled with disturbing themes and morally gray characters. However, despite its new direction, the game's execution of the story and gameplay mechanics left some fans feeling underwhelmed. One of the key features of Far Cry 5 was the open-ended, non-linear approach to mission. Players were no longer locked into a specific order of events, but could choose how to engage with the story, either through main missions or side activities. However, some of the charm of previous Far Cry games, like the sense of wonder and exploration, seemed to be lost in Far Cry 5. The focus on combat over world building made it feel more like a typical shooter rather than the immersive experience that earlier entries offered. Though Far Cry 5 didn't fully live up to expectations, it still had its moments of brilliance, particularly in its atmospheric setting and thought-provoking themes. The game's exploration of radicalism and survivalism in modern-day America offered a unique and captivating narrative that deserves recognition. Coming in at number 3, Quantum Break is a game that defied expectations and yet somehow remained underappreciated. The game combined traditional third-person shooter mechanics with time manipulation powers, creating a unique gameplay experience that was visually stunning and narratively ambitious. What set Quantum Break apart was the blending of live-action television episodes with traditional gameplay, a bold narrative choice that was largely unheard of at the time. Although it was brilliant, the game failed to gain the widespread acclaim many expected, likely because of its complex narrative structure and heavy reliance on time-based mechanics. Some players felt that the time powers were underused and that the combat became repetitive after a while. On top of that, while the live-action segments provided an interesting narrative layer, they disrupted the pacing of the game for some players, breaking the immersion and making the story feel disjointed at times. Despite its flaws, Quantum Break remains a visually impressive and narratively daring title. The game's ambitious approach to storytelling, paired with a memorable cast and exciting gameplay mechanics, still holds up well today. While it may not have been a smash hit, its innovative mix of live action and interactive gameplay paved the way for future experiments in narrative-driven games. At number 2, we have Kingdom Come: Deliverance, an open-world RPG that took a historically accurate approach to medieval life, setting it apart from other fantasy RPGs. Released in 2018, Kingdom Come delivered a deep and complex narrative set in 15th century Bohemia, focusing on the life of Henry, a blacksmith's son. Unlike most RPGs, the game did not include magic or mythical creatures, instead focusing on the gritty reality of medieval warfare and society. Combat in Kingdom Come was was one of the game's most praised features, with a deep, skill-based system that required precise timing and strategy to master. The sword fighting was especially intricate, relying on directional attacks and blocks to create realistic duels. The game's open-world design was expansive, with towns, villages, and forests to explore, but the slow pacing and lack of hand-holding could be off-putting for some, especially for those used to more fast-paced RPGs. The game's intricate combat mechanics, rich world-building, and immersive narrative made it a standout in the genre, even if it wasn't for everyone. Fans of medieval history and hardcore RPGs still regard it as a hidden gem in a market dominated by fantasy titles.
Sniper, get down!
Claiming the top spot on our list, we have Uncharted Lost Legacy, a spin-off from the beloved Uncharted series that delivered a fresh take on the franchise's action-adventure formula. The game stars two characters who had appeared in previous Uncharted games, but never as the protagonists. With a shorter campaign than the main Uncharted games, Lost Legacy still managed to capture the same thrilling action, impressive visuals, and engaging storytelling that the series was known for. One of the highlights of Uncharted Lost Legacy was its diverse setting. The game's exploration mechanics, such as climbing, swinging, and solving environmental puzzles, felt as satisfying as ever. The addition of an open-world approach in certain areas was a welcome change, allowing players more freedom in how they navigated the environment. Yet some felt that Lost Legacy didn't offer anything dramatically new in terms of gameplay, leading to its somewhat overlooked reception. Though the game may not have received the same level of attention as its predecessors, it was still an exceptional game in its own right. The engaging narrative, breathtaking visuals, and tight gameplay kept the Uncharted spirit alive, even as it diverged from Nathan Drake's adventures. It may not have revolutionized the series, but it proved that Uncharted could thrive even without its iconic lead character. Fans of the franchise still regard Lost Legacy as a hidden treasure that, while underappreciated, is a worthy addition to the Uncharted legacy.